Okay, so my name is Carter Olsen. I'm a senior on the men's basketball team, and I'm here doing an interview with my beloved coaches, Chris McCabe and Christian Hildebrandt. How you guys doing?
We're good, Carter. We're probably physically doing a little bit better than you after the morning conditioning.
Yeah, yeah, it was a tough one this morning, but had some time to cool down, get something to eat. Feeling a little bit better now. You got your coffee, coach?
I'm fueling up.
There we go. All right. Well, as a SAAC executive board, we've decided during this semester to do interviews with different people over different topics. The topic that I chose to address, as it's been quite pertinent for us, especially as of late, is the topic of social justice. So that's going to be the topic of the interview today. We're just going to kind of have like a free-flowing discussion. I'm going to ask some questions, and then obviously you guys are going to be able to lead and direct the discussion a little bit with your answers. But I want to start with a couple questions that are a little bit more, not so much off topic, but a little bit more broad. And the first question I want to throw out there is, and either of you can kind of take the lead on this. When you're confronted with a new or a challenging topic, how do you typically go about seeking understanding?
Okay. The two words in there that stick out to me are new and challenging. I think when you hear those words, they come with a sense of unease and almost intimidation factor. And so for me, if I want to understand something, I've got to be okay with it. And so you can't allow yourself to be intimidated by something new, something challenging. You've got to be open and welcome to it. And so that's probably the first thing for me. If you can be open to it and welcome it in, that's a great start. And so let me work backwards on this. If I really want to understand something, Carter, I got to look at it from a lot of different angles. Right? I got to look at it from this view, that view, every kind of view I can. So what can be challenging is, depending on what the topic is, if it's something I'm passionate about, I might have a sense of emotion that takes over. And I might have some personal biases that want to take over. And so I can't allow those biases, my emotions, any kind of intimidation to box me in, so to speak. I've got to leave that stuff at the door, open myself up to that. And then I think I can look at the root of the problem and get a full understanding of what's at hand.
Yeah, and I just echo that, and I'd say that, it's a lot of fact finding and trying to just understand, like you said, new and challenging. How do you seek to understand? Well, it's trying to find facts and what it is that has caused a conflict or caused a problem, and then what are we trying to accomplish out of it. But much of what Coach said, I absolutely align with on that.
Yeah, I really liked the point you made, Coach Hildebrandt, about not boxing yourself in, right? Like being aware that you come into any situation or any difficult conversation with biases and with emotions, and being able to control those gives you the ability to really be, like you say, a little bit more unbiased, a little bit more open, and able to kind of capture what other people are maybe bringing to the conversation. So I like that a lot. And I think it applies quite a bit in this topic of social justice, because we all bring different experiences, different biases, and that can make it difficult sometimes to have an open and honest conversation. So that kind of leads me into my second question a little bit. With this topic, a lot of people are bringing personal experiences and feel strongly about it because they've been personally affected. And so again, kind of on a broader scale, I wanted to pose the question to you two. When you think about personal or professional struggles that you've had in your life, what sort of responses from others have helped you feel the most supported or the most uplifted?
Well, that's and when you have more experiences and more time, then you realize how many struggles there are in profession and personal things happen. Life happens so fast. And, when people are available to you, it's important, but then the level of trust that you have with someone, to have a level of vulnerability to them, if you're in a situation, because when you talk about struggle or when you talk about things that you aren't sure about, there is an inherent almost like weakness that comes out in you that you maybe don't want people to see. And so what level of trust do you have with people so that you can speak candidly? You can get honest feedback. Do you have people in your life that give you honest feedback and say, I understand where you're coming from, but I just don't think you're right? And are you able to digest that? Because there is a level of trust. And then, like, for me at least, like, it's just a matter of communication. Like how are you talking? How are you receiving a message? How are you giving a message, so that knowing the room and knowing the tone of the conversation goes a long way towards being able to solve a problem or give direction, because there's sometimes that there's not a clear solution for something, but you're just working towards it.
Yeah, I think it's really, really important to surround yourself with good people. And so the coach's point about your trust and what kind of relationship do we have? What foundation was our relationship built on? For me, it's big that I people can empathize with me. If you can empathize with me, that helps me. To directly answer your question, that's going to uplift me more than anything. And so, is it genuine? Can you genuinely empathize with me? Is my short answer. But when I have people who, if I use a basketball coach as an example, we're struggling to get our guys to buy in. If we can get our guys to buy into this one thing, this one defensive concept, and we'll get over that hump. And I can call my buddy who's also a coach. And he's like, you know what? A couple of years ago, we were in the same spot. I know exactly what you're feeling. That's going to help me. And that's a very specific example. But empathy to me is a big deal.
Absolutely. So now then, taking, your answers to this question and now applying it a little bit more towards what we've seen as of late with social justice, with the Black Lives Matter movement. Obviously, at least from my perspective, the death of George Floyd really sparked this movement in a way, because the Black Lives Matter movement has been coming along for quite a while now. But the George Floyd death really has kind of reawakened that in a lot of ways. And then recently, in the last couple of days, we've seen the ruling in the Breonna Taylor case, and there's been a lot of, especially in the sports world, a lot of athletes speaking out about that and their desire to see justice. So I kind of wanted to leave. This isn't so much a question as it is more being able to just take this discussion whatever direction you want to. But I'd like you two to be able to just speak a little bit about any experiences or feelings that you've had with regard to this movement as it's developed.
Okay. So that's a really good question. I mean, good deal, Carter. It's something that you can really, really get going and branch out a lot of different ways. So I'll try to really talk about something in particular. So for me, I'm a person of color and I'm a basketball coach. And so as a coach, I try to lead and I try to grow you guys into to put you out in life and live a successful life and do well. Many of the players I've coached are people of color as well. And so when the George Floyd deal came out and we're seeing the riots, I felt it was important for me to reach out to guys that I've coached. And so I started making some phone calls. And I was very, very surprised because some of these guys, I haven't talked to them 2, 3, 4 years. And as we got talking, you would think we talked every day. And so I'm just talking to them and asking, how are you doing with this? How are you feeling? And I got a wide variety of emotions and responses. Some guys were upset. I mean, they're sad. They're down. in my role, can I be there to pick them back up in a way? Some guys are angry, right? They're mad, they're furious, and so can I get them off that ledge real quick and breathe, and let's talk, and we'll move from there. But there was one consistent deal that really, really stuck out to me, and I kept hearing it over and over in a few different ways. It's, Coach, I'm tired. Coach, I'm exhausted, man. Coach, like, I'm worn out. So I'm like, guys, talk to me about this. What do you mean? I'm like, Coach, this is stuff that was talked about before. We didn't have any evidence. This is stuff that was talked about before. But nobody was like, no, there's no video. It didn't happen. So I'm like, Coach, we got video now. We're seeing it. And so we're talking about it. And people are still telling us, no, what about this? No, what happened to get that? And so these are men, right, trying to express feelings. And you guys know that's tough. They're trying to express their feelings, and they're getting shot down over and over and over again. And so after a while, yeah, you're going to be pretty furious, and you're going to get mad, and you might get a riot as a result. And I'm not saying I agree with it, but, I do understand how that could happen. And so, one of the guys has a kid. Obviously, the kid's very young, and he's like, Coach, here's my thing. He goes back to the Tamir Rice story, and he's like, well, my kid's 10, and he's outside playing with his friends, and there's a toy gun around. Do I tell him just don't pick the toy gun up? Like, don't be a kid and play with that toy. Go play with something else. Or do I tell him pick it up? But what happens if law enforcement comes by? What is he supposed to do? Do I tell him throw it down, throw his hands up? Do I tell him continue to play with it? Because there's a weird deal with that, because one, you want to keep your child safe. That's first and foremost. But two is how are you setting that kid's brain up for the future, right? So is it every time he sees law enforcement, is his initial reaction, throw my hands up and be scared? Because these are people that are trained and swore in to protect us. And he got really emotional on the phone, and it's tough. And so to hear this, these conversations that I have is so eye-opening even for me, because every single player had an experience with law enforcement of some sort in a negative way. Yeah, each of them were different, and I can say I've had my own too. And so it was just very, very eye-opening to me, and that's why when I talk to people now, I just really, really encourage to just go and have some conversations with people, and just go and talk and learn and listen. That might be the biggest one, is just listen, and try to put yourself in their shoes. And I'll try to quit going so long, but Carter, you've got teammates that don't look like you. You've got, so let's say you live in a nice, all right, you're going to a buddy's house. He's having a party. You guys get there at 10 p.m., nice suburban neighborhood. You guys leave at midnight. You're driving your car, you get pulled over. Hey, where are you coming from? I'm at my buddy's house, we're at a party. Okay, you probably feel pretty comfortable in that situation. All right, so then you've got some of your teammates who in that situation might not feel as comfortable, and will have reason to believe that the cop's going to say something about, I don't know about this. You don't look like you should be in this neighborhood. And then possibilities of calling for backup. And then, so now you've just got to be very, very careful with your body movements, with what you say and what you do from that point on, because what we're seeing is that could be the difference between something drastic happening or you going home to see your family again. And so those are the things that stick out to me, and those conversations were really, really eye-opening in a lot of ways.
And all of what Coach said is so valid, because those are words coming from people with experience. And so if you haven't had personal negative experience, I don't know if it resonates the same way with you. And we're in sports. And so we have a group that comes from different backgrounds, different beliefs, different sizes, shapes. But when we're together, we work towards something that's common. We build commonalities amongst a group. And everything that what Coach said is the opposite, that we've had groups that have never bridged to common ground, but if anything, built more divisiveness between. And that is what's worrisome and scary, is how are we this much of a civilized society, and yet it's 2020, and if you look back in history, we have years of the same type of behavior, and that's bothersome.
Yeah, I think it is difficult to, like you were saying, Coach McCabe, maybe these protests, right, and the Black Lives Matter movement, it's hard for it to resonate the same way with you if you don't have these lived experiences, like you were alluding to, Coach Hildebrandt, like you were talking about. Without the lived experiences, it's really hard for this to resonate with you and for you to immediately pick it up and say, yeah, you know what, this is a real problem within our society. Because, yeah, truthfully, I've never been in that situation where I have an encounter with law enforcement. And I think, oh, like, I remember one of my friends telling me such and such happened to him, or an uncle or a cousin. And so that could happen to me. Like, I'm scared for my life in this situation. Like, I'm truly in danger here. I've never felt that, right? And so I think that was some of my initial reaction when the death of George Floyd happened, is, here it is on tape. And it was almost like just really surprising. I was like eye-opening. Like, I don't hear stories about things like that happening, or I don't see that within my own community that often. And so it's surprising, and yeah, it frustrates you, but then that's not the norm, right? That's kind of the initial reaction. Like, that doesn't happen that often. This is a one-off. But then you talk about these conversations that you're having with players that you've coached that are Black, that have had these experiences and heard about these things throughout their lives. And so I think one of the conversations that I had that most helped me maybe empathize or sympathize, at least with what some of my teammates have felt, is I reached out to a kid that I played with in high school, and he'd been really outspoken on social media and these things, and going to protests. And so I reached out to him and kind of asked him, how are you feeling about this? Like, why is it that you feel, the need to go out in the streets? Because I feel like that's, something that you have to feel pretty strongly to get out there. And then I kind of asked him, what part do I play in this? Like, how can I help you, and how can I play a part in this conversation? He said, man, you just need to listen. You just need to listen, because what you've lived is not what I've lived. And I don't expect you to fully understand what I'm talking about right now, but I need you to listen, and I need you to, like he and I are really close. He said, you're like a brother to me. And so when I tell you these things, I know you take me seriously. Just make sure you ask, right? Ask the questions, be willing to listen. And, if you've got any goodwill towards someone in your body, and you sit there and listen to an emotional experience like that, and something that touches someone so deeply, you can't help but sympathize and want to do what you can to better the situation. So
Sure.
I wanted to ask you guys, there's words that have come up, empathy. Coach Hildebrandt, you touched on that. And we talked a little bit about humility, being able to check your biases and be willing to listen to people. Other words that come to mind for me are unity, solidarity. So maybe could we talk a little bit about maybe one or two of those concepts and what role they play in your own personal approaches to conversations about social justice?
Yeah. So humility is an interesting word, because that's to say that you don't have the answers. You're maybe not sure, but it's still not degrading to yourself or your beliefs or your passion for wanting to move something forward. What was alarming about the George Floyd death is we saw someone's life be taken in video, basically. And that, we've heard of tragedy. Families have experienced tragedy, but an act of disregard for other human life hasn't been broadcast for mass public to see usually. So then when it is, and then when the basis of race is involved, you have an entirely different ballgame, because it brings up so many things and gives voice to so many people who otherwise maybe haven't had that voice or that ear. And I say that because, are you humble enough, do you have enough humility to sit across and not be able to solve someone's problems, or not be able to relate, but know that they're incredibly valid? Do you have enough humility to not think that maybe I need to be better at what I'm doing and how I interact and what I believe? Are my words matching my actions? Are my actions causing change? Or are my actions simply things I believe would move something forward, but is that really the most impactful thing I can do? So humility is, I think, something that, right, empathy is the most important, and Coach hit on that, hit on it very well about the ability to empathize, the ability to build human empathy, to relate, understand, or not relate and not understand, but still have a human connection. But then humility is something that I think we all can work on and have more of.
Yeah. The word unity, I'd like to try to, when I approach conversations, I'd like to try to get there. But I sometimes it could be very, very short. Carter, use your example with you and your friend. If you were talking to that guy and he's talking about, there's an issue going on, there's a problem, and your response is, no, there's no problem. If I'm him, that our conversation is probably done at that point, because I just don't think we're going to get much done. But then when you can't accept the fact that there is a true problem going on, unity to me is, can we come to some kind of ground that we agree on something and go from there? And I don't have any examples for this right now, but can we talk and listen to each other, effectively communicate, and come to something in common, and can we take that and work from there? And so when I'm approaching those conversations, that's a word that comes to mind as well. But Coach, he hit it out of the park with humility.
Absolutely. And I think, a lot of these conversations, we want to move towards solutions, and sometimes we don't have, like you were saying, Coach McCabe, sometimes you sit across from someone, and like the conversation that I had, like I could sit and I could listen and I could try to sympathize, but at the end of the day, like, I don't have a solution. I can't fix that for you. I can't make you feel safe, right, around law enforcement. I can't fix this problem for you right now. But obviously this is something that, we are looking to move towards solutions, things that we can work on collectively. And I think, like you touched on, Coach McCabe, it starts with the individual, right? What can I do better? But I think it's really important that we have these conversations, right? And that even if, maybe you don't agree with the person across from you in the way they're dealing with it, you can at least recognize, okay, these are your feelings, and you feel that way for some reason, right? Some experience, some emotion that you have, and we can't invalidate that when we have those conversations. And that kind of leads me into, I wanted to ask kind of this last question, is, there is, with the topic of social justice, just to be really frank and transparent, you run into a lot of controversy, right? There's a lot of divisive rhetoric in the media. Depending on which media outlet you look to, you could hear these are unruly riots, or if you look on the other side, they say, they could say completely the opposite, right? That this is exactly what people need to be doing. And there's just a lot of factors that get thrown in that really, I think, take away from the message, right? Which is at its root, this is a human issue, and we need to deal with it between ourselves, despite whatever political views we may have, right? So how can we kind of combat that type of divisive rhetoric and, politicization, I guess you could say, of the issue within our Jewell community, within the athletic community here? How can we push back against that and unify ourselves?
Well, I mean, I think as athletes, you have a very unique opportunity to meet some people that come from various different backgrounds, whether it be other side of the country, urban, rural, other side of the world. If I look back at our program the last 5-6 years, we've got dudes from Cameroon, West Africa, Russia, Spain, Puerto Rico, Manchester. We've had guys from all over. You've got a unique opportunity to meet some really, really special people and just listen and learn, like we talked about already. And so then, can you assess your community? And can you go and have those those conversations that we've talked about and talk to those who have been affected by something and learn? And then when you do that, how does that make you feel? And then can you take it upon yourself to really, really put your foot down and try to better your community? Can you address social issues by creating committees? Can you volunteer and help people get registered to vote? Can you get with your team and talk about voting and talk about policies? And, if we want change, this is how we can do it, and how in our role can we do that? And just informing yourself. And that's probably the biggest thing to me is you talked about media. Media is powerful. Social media only amplifies it. And so when I get on Facebook, I see people share. What that takes away is you're not having to look up anything on your own. You're not doing your own research. You're just reading something, and that kind of aligns with what I got. And that takes away these conversations that could be had to where you can actually learn something from somebody. So if I just share away, I'm not having to go do my own research or learn anything at all. I just saw something that caught my eye. I posted on a public forum, and then somebody comes back and combats it, and then that's just the tribalism that we get into, and then we just argue. And I go look for something else I can share instead of having to actually go and talk to people and learn to get my point across. And to me, that's a big issue.
And that's so spot on, and that aligns on you're asking what student athletes can do, right? And we're not trying to build consensus of one belief. We're not trying to get confirmation bias of I believe it, therefore it's true, and anybody needs to agree with me. If you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. But we're not going to agree on certain experiences and the way that they've impacted myself different than Coach Hildebrandt. We're not going to agree on those experiences because I didn't have those experiences. Coach did. What I need to, and what as student athletes we foundationally need to agree upon is the value of human life, the value of freedom of expression, the value to be able to form your own opinions, to have your own beliefs, and to stand for something that then makes you, your peers, your institution, and your community better. So while we may not agree politically on right, left, or these things, I think that's part of what makes America what it is. But we don't need to agree on those things. Can't we agree on the value of human life, and the value of treating people with dignity and respect, irrespective of skin color? And unfortunately, what has been very clear is the resounding answer is we can't. And that's scary. And so as Jewell student athletes, as people with positions of authority and influence and power, you know, we have to value each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's spot on. And I think that's a good place to kind of bring our discussion to a close. But I like that point, obviously, of valuing human life, treating each other with dignity, respect, recognizing the value in others' experiences and their emotions, and being able to have open conversations about that. Well, I thank you guys for taking the time to have this discussion. I think it's one of, you know, several discussions now that I've had with regard to this topic, and each time I sit down and talk about this with someone, it helps me to understand a little bit better my place in all of this, and what I can do individually and as part of, you know, an athletic community here at Jewell to try and make things a little bit better and make people feel welcome and an equal part. So with that, I thank you guys for your time, and look for more videos coming out soon through our SAAC social media pages. Thank you.